Yeah, there was this other part though to watching a long series of videos about like how goth women are not your fetish, and complaints about the big titty goth girl meme, and everything else. And I kind of wanted to get into this because I'm just floating this out there, but I would not mind having somebody that was part of alternative in that kind of way as a partner. But already have partner, so it's just my partner's not non-monogamous, strictly speaking. So I am still able to sort of be on the prowl, although I'm not aggressively in pursuit. But just as a suggestion, I would not mind dating somebody that was goth. Um, but I kind of wanted to do some depth diving into it because if you followed me at any length of time on different platforms, you know by now that I'm a poet, and I write poetry, and so like obviously self reflection and depth diving my own psychology to figure out why it is that I feel the way that I do is something that I find myself interested in doing in the first place. And so I find myself, when I'm watching these videos, questioning my own intentions and why it is that I find myself interested in these women in the first place. And I thought I would do my best to articulate an answer to that. I I happen to know, like, self-awareness wise, that I'm pretty like, my interest in sexuality is pretty vanilla. It's not part of the BDSM subculture at all. And when I think about what the other people said about being bullied into being part of the BDSM subculture for being goth, that also pissed me off. It's like, why should we have to be part of this or considered boring if we're not part of it? Like, why can't we blend an interest in vanilla sex and a gothic identity together? I'm not one of those kinksters that's interested in them because I think think of them as more interested in chains and whips and bondage. Like, that's just not guilty of that at all. So what is it that gets me into these people? Like, instead, if it's not those things, then why am I attracted to it in the first place? Well, we have this idea in our heads, I think, or of people, like being interested in people because of the way that they look, and and the aesthetic of things. And it's like there's an appeal there, but I'm not the sort of person that does anything at all for only one reason. And I find that that's really that's been almost the truth of my experience. Like, why am I learning the things that I'm learning? Why am I studying the things that I'm studying? And I come to the conclusion that, like, I'm interested in these various tech issues because the applications of learning how to do these things are like, there's millions of potential uses of learning how to you know solder something together and put something together, or how to write code, or to use Linux. I mean, the possibilities are pretty much endless, and that's why I study the things that I study. And that's the real reason for it. I can't, like, my mind is reeling at the potential applications of it. So it's kind of the same thing when it comes to, like, why it is that I would be attracted to people that put on this alternative aesthetic and listen to these different styles of music. Well, first of all, I listen to EBM and industrial myself already. I'm already part of that. I potentially could be persuaded into listening to some of the more classic, and traditional goth music. I wouldn't mind, being subjected to it, or in the presence of somebody that was more of the purist bent of things. It wouldn't really bother me. The thing that really got me was that I had to process this, and I started to realize that rewind the clock about all the videos that you've watched and realize what it is that's going on here. And so I would say that my understanding of things is basically that women like Angela Bennett have a bit of a problem with being approached by the guys that used to make fun of them for being part of this alternative scene and that are now suddenly interested in them because of the fact that Angela Benedict, like of these guys that are suddenly interested in them, because of the way that, that they look, and that the guys are just suddenly kind of tired of the sort of basic, experience, and they're suddenly looking for something that's a little bit more kinkster-ish and everything, and they're not interested in that at all. Like, it's just a bad reason to be attracted to somebody. And so I agree, sex should not be the only allure that you have of somebody that you want to be with on a long-term basis. There should be more to it. And so when I got myself plunging the depths of my own interest, it was like it's relatability at the end of the day. I've been made fun of myself, and I've experienced bullying. It's been part of my, identity and part of my experience. Um, I don't like talking about being bullied though, because every time I do, somebody will pipe up, "Oh yeah, I went through that too." As I go through in real life, I find people talking about their experience every time I open up about it, and it's just like, no, I'm sorry, but no, you didn't go through what I went through. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I don't mean to be offensive. It's just that the kids that I grew up with were completely fucking obsessed and obsessive about trying to hurt me to such an extent that you know, people will describe the experience as, there being like this group of this little clique of like three or four kids, or two groups of those kids that used to pick on them that they have to avoid going around. But mine was more like, there's a, like, I have to, like, I got so fed up with things that I would give up my library. I would give up my recess experience and go into the library in order to put books away, because being out there at recess meant being, essentially an open target to being harassed for basically no reason other than walking past some of these kids. And the only place that you could go to be left alone on the recess field was like literally, like, there's a big field too that surrounds like the playground. You'd have to go onto the far ends and just try your best to stay away from literally everybody, because somebody like has an issue with you, like, from every direction. And it was like, there's 30 of these groups of kids that you have to avoid, or more, and little packs of three or four of them, and some of them bigger. Like, you've got to stay away from basically everybody, and there's no dodging somebody's always going to say something snide and pick on you. Not only that, but there's at least two of these groups that have gone off the deep end, so to speak. One of them in particular has these two girls, Kara and Elise, whose names, I want to differentiate this. I'm not talking about my dead friend Kara. I'm talking about Kara Garcia, who one day, since my mother was a Jehovah's Witness, I went to a witness meeting and found Sister Garcia, made the mental connection and realized that they were related to each other, asked about it, and then confided in Kara that I knew her secret. Kara swore me to secrecy, which I literally followed to a T. I never told anybody else about the whole thing, but it represented a significant escalation in the conflict that existed between the two of us. At that point, I found out many years later that, Lori, who was my friend at that point, had literally been molested by those two in the bathroom at school, and felt up and everything in the locker rooms and the harassment that she had to go through. And a lot of it was just owing to the fact that there was this association between me and her. Okay, so my friends are being sexually harassed by people who have figured out that I like being harassed by them anyways, because I find them to be such awful people that it's like, oh, hey, thanks for the compliment when they insult me. But then, of course, what they do is they decide, oh, well, we can't hurt him anymore. We can't hurt his feelings, so let's try to take the side door and molest his friends. in the locker room just for being his friends, because how dare somebody be this person's friend? And it had reached that level of Machiavellian bullshit, obsessiveness, and just utter depravity and sickness. And that is what I had to go through. So I didn't get the standard course of bullying. I got, I went through an experience that outright bordered on college hazing, and in a lot of ways there were actual crimes committed against us, and shit that was done to my friends just because of the fact that they were friends of mine by these adolescent girls that just did not have any sense of boundaries, were completely fucked up, were creative in their destruction, and their ability to dream up ways to fuck with people, and were sort of Machiavellian geniuses in how they decided that they were going to go about tormenting other people. And you know, I remarkably enough, after having gone through that entire experience, I'm a pretty loud, outspoken feminist who is usually on women's side and is, preaching about against things like, just how easy it is for people to get away with rape in this country because somebody will always pipe up, some stupid fucking snide comment. Well, what was she wearing? When it doesn't matter. I mean, there are women in burqas that go through the damn thing. Like the answer to that question is it doesn't fucking matter. Like that's the only acceptable response to the whole thing, because rapists are gonna rape no matter what women are wearing. So I'm part of like the feminist movement. I'm outspoken. I fight for them. I've donated to them. My money is where my mouth is. I'm not just somebody that's coming up here with a platform to say yes, I support the cause. Like like for the fucking brownie points of having done it. Like I'm not looking for cookies as a result of being, on the side of the feminist. Like I just am on their side. Like I very much so would not mind being rewarded for it, but I'm not doing it for any sort of reward. You know what I mean? Like it's just not something that and if there were perks to be discussed when it came to being an ally of the feminist movement, the only thing that I really want at this point is just the basic, respect. And in the old days I might have said send nudes, but at 36, like I've outgrown that, and now it's just sort of like I find that you know I don't get enough, in terms of respect, and so of the opposite sex, just be nice to me. That's really all I'm asking for. It's changed. I mean, I've grown up. I've become a completely different person that's a little bit less, depraved in that department. So I'm a little bit embarrassed about my own past when it comes to that sort of thing. But yeah, why the interest in these alternative women? Well, I'm not one of the guys that heckled them in the past. Um, to be honest with you, I was getting harassed myself, and I have an identity that I have outsider status, to a huge extent, and being being an outsider as it is, and being a misfit, and realizing that these women are discomforted by the fact that their former bullies are suddenly interested in them. I wasn't one of the bullies back then. I was just some guy who was getting bullied myself. And so it's this shared sense of social identity about being a misfit, because goth people have always been looked at as a bit funny by our society, and I'm the same way. I've been bullied quite a bit and extensively over my lifespan. And I'm not trying to step on or appropriate the experience of women here on YouTube, by the way. You guys get harassed all the time and you guys have to deal with it. You know, I'm just, testifying to my truth. I've been bullied too. I am well aware of the fact that female YouTubers have to deal with a lot more than I do, though. But that's now. That's today. That's how things have become. Like back in the heyday, I was going through much worse than what they were. But those days are gone, and now women are experiencing most of the harassment that I had to deal with 30 fucking, 30 and, 25 to 30 years ago, basically. You're now all going through it. I'm so sorry. I wouldn't wish that shit on my worst enemies. But yeah, if I'm interested in people that are part of like the alternative scene and the way that those women and like their attraction to the macabre and that their interest in black and everything else, it's because of the fact that we have an affinity for you and in the sense that we're both misfits. I mean that's what it really boils down to. It's this idea too that the people that are misfits maybe should band together, and stick together. It's really that's really what it boils down to at the end of the day. So, I mean, I'm not one of the people that's interested in the kinkster aspect of it. I'm not one of the people that's interested in the BDSM aspect of it. I'm not talking about goth women as big titty goth girls as the fucking meme goes. I'm just somebody that wouldn't mind dating somebody that's part of the subculture.